Hi everyone, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to my review and book chat of Drums of Autumn by Diana Gabaldon. I have it kind of sitting back there already, so I'm gonna leave it. This candle, I'll show you, I got for my birthday from one of my good friends, and it's a Fraziers Ridge candle, which is, you know, book 4. And it is evergreen, citrus, and sage, and I love it so much. And this is my first edition of the paperback that I found at a used bookstore. It is like so beaten up. It already was when I got it, and the spine is starting to curve, but this was my I love this. Look at this picture of Diana inside, guys. Because I think this one was 97. Yeah, this book came out in 1997 by Diana Gabaldon and was the fourth entry into the Outlander series. And oh my goodness, one more thing. The plow is going by right now because we got an epic snowstorm over Christmas week in Fargo. So I've been stuck at home a long time. I'm kind of sick. My throat is pretty weak right now, but I really wanted to record this review because I'm already starting to forget things, even though I took a ton of notes and annotated the crap out of this book. So much. But I really wanted to get to this review, and so here we go. So just bear with me with the strange noises and my throat falling apart. So the way that I've been doing these reviews is kind of doing things that I love and things that I didn't like so much. I will tell you the things I didn't like so much. It's a very small list and it's kind of petty. When we get to it, you'll see. But this book, I remember being my favorite. You know I've said that about a couple of these before, but this one held up. Whereas Voyager, it didn't feel as much my favorite after I reread it. Still loved it. All of these books are 5 stars for me. But Voyager just didn't have the same passion from me as this book elicits. This book is like it's speaking into my heart and into my soul. And I think that's because we're not just talking about romantic love in this book. We are really, really, really talking about father and child relationships, specifically, and most focusing on Jamie and his children. There are scenes with Willy and scenes with Brianna, as well as Brianna gets added as a POV character in this one. This is the first time we get her, so now we have the 4 POVs. We have Claire, Jamie, Roger, and Bree. Diana usually adds one new POV each book, is just kind of how it worked out. And for me in this book, father-daughter relationships, I mean, I'm sure they're important to all of us, but for me, they are just so ingrained in who I am as a person. And something that's kind of personal for me, and I share this because it directly affects how I feel about this book, is that I've been with my birth father my whole life. He's been around. My parents were married my whole life. But my father and I did not become close until about 5 years ago. And it was like rediscovering him. And I have a more intimate and deep relationship with my father than I ever did as a child. In fact, as a child, I had 3 of my friends' parents, fathers, were more like fathers to me than mine was. Specifically, my pastor when I was a child, him and his wife really helped raise me, as well as my best friend's parents, which Mama Julie, I've talked about her before. So though that is vastly different from this fantasy situation we're talking about, I have a deep connection with someone who would be rediscovering a parent and coming to know them in either a way they never have before or relearning things about them. And so I have a connection with Bree that I never noticed before. I think the first time I read this book, I was either just reconnecting with my dad or it hadn't happened yet. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if we were as close as we are now yet when I first read this. So the first off in the things that I love is I love Brianna Randall Fraser Mackenzie. Oh my word. I love her so much. I don't know where I got it in my head that I didn't. I feel like it's been a lot of the taint that like the TV show has brought to my feelings about her, which obviously I'll have a lot to say about that in my season 4 review. But I've forgotten how much I relate to her and how much I just see her. She is a fully fleshed, strong, courageous, loyal, passionate woman. And I see her. And all the feelings that she has, all the emotions she goes through, I'm right there with her. I connect with Bree more than I connect with anyone else in this series. Claire, I feel like, is unattainable to me. She is, of course she has flaws, but to me, she's almost a perfect character. And I see her more as like, I don't put myself in her position the way that I can with Bree. And oh my gosh, Brianna is a queen to me. Right from the beginning of this, I love how, number one, in this book, we really see time passing. Like, I think we go through almost 3 years in this one, or 2.5 years in this one. And so when we're picking back up with, it must be 3, because when we're picking back up with Bree and Roger, we have some different times with them. Like, we get to see different scenes with them, like when a man lands on the moon and he comes to see her one year for the new year and she comes to see him for Christmas, and they're doing this long distance relationship. And one of the times she comes to visit, he proposes to her and she can't say yes because she's afraid that somehow she'll go through the stones, which, I mean, Roger's like, that's kind of irrational. Now that you know how it happens, just stay away from it. And she's like, I know, but my mom, I thought she loved my dad. And she did love my dad. We're talking about Frank. And then she got pulled through time and she found another love. And she didn't do it to hurt my father, but she did. And she's like, when I marry someone, it will be for the rest of my life. No matter what it costs me or what happens, I will love that person. And she's basically saying that she's not ready to do that, which is fair because she's 20 years old when this is happening, like 21. And it's understandable that she not be ready for that commitment yet. And Roger, I think he's like 28 when it's happening. So he's like 8 or 10 years older than her. So he's in a completely different place than her. And I find their scenes, which so many people give Roger crap, like so many people give him crap, but I also relate to him. I'm a Christian. I was raised that way. I have different values. Granted, he's being kind of hypocritical because he's slept around, but with Bree, he tells her, he's like, it's important to you. I didn't stay with those women. They didn't want me to stay. I made bad choices, but with you, I want to do it the right way. And I respect that so much. I also respect Brianna saying, I'm not going to marry you just so we can have sex. It needs to be the right time. And he sets up really a very powerful ultimatum. He says, I will have all of you or none of you. And I like that because it's something he says to Bree that comes back to bite him in the ass later on because, well, we'll get there. But I really love Roger. I love that he is flawed. I love that I don't love it, but I understand why he makes the choice of like, I can't risk her going back. It's dangerous. It is more likely that she'll die. Horrible things happen. And the shitty part is that he's right. He's right. Shitty stuff happens to her when she goes back. But the part that's frustrating is that they couldn't do it together. And Bree's reasoning is a little bit haywire. However, we don't understand how time travel works. So her thought is that you have to have someone you love on the other side, or something that, like someone to put in your mind when you go through the stones so that you can do it. So when she goes through, she's thinking of her parents. And then when she wants to come back, she wants to be thinking about Roger. And him coming to find her kind of ruined. So I'm really into their relationship dynamic. I love that they make mistakes and that they mess up. Claire and Jamie mess up. They make mistakes. You know, Claire tried to run away from him 3 times when they first were together. Like, people make mistakes. And and what he does is wrong. However, he immediately tries to fix it. He follows after her at great personal risk to himself. And everything that happens, all these like miscommunications and things that happen one after the other, that's what happens in a story. And the miscommunications in this one and the almost missing people are almost painful to behold. But damn. We'll talk about Stephen Bonnet real quick then, since he is in the way. So Stephen Bonnet is, quote unquote, the villain that we deal with for the next, probably for about 3 books. I think we deal with Stephen Bonnet. We meet him very early on as almost in the first chapter. I think it's the 3rd or 4th chapter. And Jamie and Claire help him out. And what an innocuous thing to do to save someone from hanging. And he fucking abuses it at every chance that he can. And it's crazy. The guilt that will give Jamie for the rest of his life. The consequences there are from this situation. But also the character growth we see because of it is crazy. Stephen Bonnet is very complex. And I really noticed that this time through this read because I was looking for it. Because I really like the actor who plays him in the show. And so through the book, I was like, I want to pick at this person. So I did a lot of highlighting whenever he was there. And he doesn't ever lie about who he is. Granted, we don't know that he's a rapist and a murderer, but we know he's not a great person. And, you know, that's hard because they let him go. He comes after Claire. He kills someone. He beats them up. He steals her ring. And then we don't see him for a long time. And then Bree and Roger have to deal with him. And Roger works for him, saves some people from him. Bree gets raped by him. It's such a mess. But when we see him at the end of the book, when Brianna gets to confront him and actually, like, he saves her life and wants to take her with him to take care of her and the baby, it's like, where does that come from? So, like, there's more to him than this. And you could say he's a product of his time, which I'm inclined to give a little bit to, although we've seen plenty of people from that time who aren't like that. He's a weird character. So I wouldn't call him fully like gray, but I would call him complex, a pretty dark character with spots of interest spread through. That's what I would say. He's a very interesting character. And I mean, I like reading about him anyway. I don't have to like him to think he's fascinating reading. I would call him like chaotic, not neutral because he does bad things, but I wouldn't call him completely evil. I don't know. He's this weird thing. And we get more layers of his character later on, which I look forward to getting into in this reread because I'm really looking for them. So he's interesting. Next, Jamie and Claire starting the Ridge. I love like homesteading stuff, and I really love like Little House on the Prairie, you know, is one of my favorite book series. And so I love when they are building Fraziers Ridge and we're getting more and more of Scottish people coming to live there. There isn't a ton of that happening in this one. That really happens in the Fiery Cross. But I love that they're building, they're having to deal with the elements. It's very dangerous. There is death around every corner. Like Jamie and Claire, I was counting for a while. They almost die about 6 times in the first half of this book between a bear, getting stuck outside overnight, illness, Stephen Bonnet, like all these things happen to them in America, and it's not any safer than we were in Scotland. You know, just because he's not a fugitive here doesn't mean he's any safer. And Jamie has to make a choice whether to be used by his Aunt Jocasta as a head man and be manipulated, or to take some land from the governor and now be under the governor's thumb. So the governor is Lord Tryon, I think. I could be mixing these people up, so I'm sorry, but I believe it's Lord Tryon that he takes the offer, and he gets a bunch of land to go start the Ridge, where he's then going to, you know, he basically gets to be a laird again is what he'll get to do. But there's heavy taxes you have to pay, and now he has put himself on the side of the crown and has to enforce things for the crown, which we will again see in the Fiery Cross. Right now they're kind of left to their own devices because he's still building up the community and everything, which we know that the crown will lose this war that's coming. And so it's hard because Claire's like, we're finally in a country where this country's going to win. But to get to that, we need to be on the side of the crowned. So they know that at some point in the future, they'll have to make a switch, but will they be able to make it at the right time? Will they be punished by the regulars or will they be punished by the British? You know, he's in this tough place. And I think it's fascinating setup to have. My favorite stuff, as I said at the top, is Bree and Jamie and when they meet. I just have a little side note for a couple other people, but then I'm going to talk about this for a little bit. So I really love when Willy and John come to the Ridge, and Willy, you know, is grown up a little bit, and Jamie ends up getting to spend a couple days with him because John gets sick. And this may be the last time Jamie ever sees his son. He doesn't get to call him his son. He has to call him Lord, your lordship. But it was a gift. And John had his own reason for coming. Isabel has died, and John doesn't know if he can feel anymore. And so he comes to the Ridge because he wants to see Jamie and see if he can still feel. And Claire has a lot of animosity towards him, which is kind of ridiculous because Jamie has no feelings beyond fondness and friendship for John. But Claire knows that John wants more. And she doesn't like that. And it's kind of hard to see Claire be so shitty to John, but they have some great interactions. I absolutely love the conversations they have, and it's pretty fascinating, and I like it a lot. All right, Bree and Jamie. I love their interactions, and there's this small part of the book where it is just nirvana. It is heaven. From their first meeting where she says who she is and Jamie sees his beautiful daughter, who I forgot to mention this at the top when I was listing how great Brianna is, but Brianna is 6 foot tall, muscular, long red hair, with all the Fraser features you could ever imagine. She looks a lot like Jamie's mother, Ellen, and I love that. I'm 5'10". I was a lot taller than a lot of guys when I was in high school and elementary school, which I got teased a lot for. I'm still a pretty big woman, even though working on that. So to see someone else represented who is tall and large and in charge and strong just makes me so happy. But anyway, for Jamie to see his daughter, who he could only dream of, he could only look at pictures, which they don't have those pictures anymore. So he just has had to have her in his mind. And to see this beautiful woman in front of him and know that this is the child with the love of his life. It wasn't a coerced, random sexual experience that led to a baby. But this is the child of his heart and with the love of his life, and she's with him. And just the continuous joy that is in Jamie and the passion that he feels for her is amazing. So they're meeting, the scenes where they're able to talk about their assaults and he's able to share some advice about his years, because it's been almost 25 years since he was assaulted by Blackjack, and be able to share his experience with revenge and his feelings about it, and really kind of help her work through her experiences with Stephen Bonnet, I think it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Those are some of the most moving parts of the book for me, and I cried a lot. There is a lot of just I've said this so many times, I'm physical touch. And there's a couple scenes I underlined where he just sits and holds her hand, or she sits in his lap at one point when she tells him she's pregnant, and he just holds her and calls her pet names and pulls her hair. And I used to love just sitting in my dad's lap and hugging him, and haven't been able to do that in a long time, but there's such a comfort in that solid frame around you, just loving you and not expecting anything from you or needing anything. They just want to be with you. And I love it so much. Oh my God. And then the birth of Jeremiah. oh my gosh, that Claire and Jamie make it back in time. Roger hasn't come yet. He's still dealing with all the feelings and the experiences he went through with the Mohawk. And getting to see Jamie be there, because Jamie hasn't been at the births of any of his children. He adopted Fergus. William was born in a castle, basically. He got to see him when he was a baby, but he didn't get to see him born. And Brianna was born in the 1940s, and he didn't get to be with her. So to have him there in the room, to comfort his daughter, to rub her back and hold her hand and tell her stories and keep her going, because she's so afraid. She's afraid she's going to die. Her mother's birth was very hard with her, and she would have died if she hadn't been in the future. And for him to say, "You will not die. I will be here and I will see you through it." And for him to get to do that, and for him to get to be there and hold his brand new grandson, is one of the most touching moments in literature for me. And we will talk about it in the show review, the fact that they don't have that in there. But that takes nothing away from the book for me. And it is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I love it so much. And I know a lot of people probably wouldn't want to have their dad there when that's happening, but when she's just crying out for her daddy to hold her hand and help her through the most difficult thing she's ever going to go through is amazing. And I love it. And ooh, it's so good. It's so good. A couple other things here. I love Lord John Grey and Bree when she tries to blackmail him. And this is why I say the height thing is interesting, because Bree is 6 foot and John is like 5'5", and she like tries to intimidate him and tries to force him to marry her so that Roger won't have to stay with her out of obligation, and so her baby will have a father. And she's really deciding at that point that she's going to stop hoping for Roger to come back, because he might be dead, or he might not want to come back, or he might hate her now. And so she's going to take care of her and the baby. And I love Lord John, because he's like, your father would effing kill me if I did this. Like, if I married you and you look almost exactly like him, and you're just like daring me to, like, I can't. He would kill me. He would never forgive me if I married you. But he does agree to be engaged to her. And he does agree to take her to see Stephen Bonnet when he almost dies doing it. And then when Claire and Jamie get back and Claire comes to see him and make sure that he's okay, and they have this like beautiful scene together, and she's like, here, and she gives him back the ring, and he's like, oh my God, I've been jilted. What a wonderful day. And it's so beautiful. And I love Lord John, and he stays a very close friend of the Fraziers, even through some interesting things that are going to happen later. But he loves Brianna, and he has a special relationship with her going forward. But I love it. I adore it so much. All right. So the father theme, again, I said is really interesting, because Bree's very worried that because this baby could be either Roger's or Stephen Bonnet's, because her and Roger became handfast, which is a marriage for a year and a day. And they had a lot of sex that night. And then 2 days later, Stephen Bonnet raped her, which was very traumatic. She was still healing from her wedding night, and then got brutally assaulted by Stephen Bonnet. And so she doesn't know who her baby belongs to. And she's worried that he can't accept it. And Jamie's able to say, like, if he can't accept the baby as his own, then he's not worthy of you. And this really brings up that Frank loved Bree, even though she wasn't his, even though he had every reason to hate her, which is why Jamie can't hate Frank, even though he wants to. Jamie adopted Fergus, the son of a whore, and we don't know which whore. And he loved him like a son, gave him his own name. And John adopted Willy and has been an excellent father to him. And so I really love all the themes. And so we don't know who Jamie belongs to, but we know that Roger came back and he is willing to love him, and he claimed him as his own. and I love it. I love it so much. So let's do a couple quick dislikes. I only have a few. I really didn't like Jocasta, and this hurts me. I thought I loved Jocasta. And the show really made me love her again too, Maria Doy Kennedy, but we'll get to that. But I really didn't like her very much. I want to love her right away because she like reminds Jamie of his mother, and she does so much to help them, but she is literally so nosy and such a busybody. She's worse than Jenny. She's worse than Mrs. Fitz. She's worse than, anyone we've seen before. And I just really didn't like her. I didn't like how she tried to manipulate Jamie instead of asking him to do things. And I didn't like how she was with some other things. And so I just didn't like her very much. I didn't like how she was with Bree. And yeah, I didn't like her. Also, Lizzie, and I just wrote, I can't help it. A lot of this isn't her fault, and I like Lizzie better in future books when she has some interesting relationships, but I just don't like her. And again, it's not her fault, but I'm an emotional reader, and she messes a lot of things up, and it drives me crazy. So a couple future points to keep in mind for other books is we are shown about Otter Tooth, who we find out was a time traveler because of the fillings in his teeth. Claire just finds a skull of him, and she finds this opal there as well, which she makes into a necklace. And this was a gem that he had found that he was saving for maybe if he went back to the future. But Otter Tooth was a Native American from like our time, and he hated how things had worked out for the Native Americans. Fair point. And so he went back in time to try to change things, and it didn't work. He ended up getting killed by them because his ideas were a little too radical, which is kind of sad, I guess. But so he will come up in future episodes, as well as there is a second stone circle that Roger finds when he is running from the Mohawk, from the Native Americans. And so that's an important thing to remember, as well as when Roger tries to go through, he makes the mistake of thinking of his father, and he almost gets killed because you cannot go back to a time when you exist. So the stones like throw him back out because he thinks of a time when his dad exists, and it's a time when he's still alive. He didn't think of his dad before he was alive. So he gets thrown out and almost dies, and then goes back in and goes to the right time. So it is important who you're thinking about. So Bree is right about that in a certain sense. So that's important to remember for going forward. So on an end note with this, my throat just can't take any more. This book is so close to my heart. It has stayed close to my heart. I had such a good time reading it. There is so many amazing metaphors and like mirroring, and it is so about fathers and their children, especially fathers and daughters, in my opinion, and I loved it so much. So again, 5 out of 5 stars, would recommend. Tell me, what are your favorite parts of this book? What are some things that you just like didn't remember if you're rereading this with me, or things you found fascinating or confusing? Whatever. Throw it at me. I can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye!